Welcome to the Advanced Persistent Security Podcast, where we discuss the world of IT and cybersecurity. Don't be left in the dark about what's going on in the world around you. Here is your host, Joe Gray.
Hi, I'm Joe Gray here with Georgia Wiedman. Georgia is the CTO of Bulb Security. She is a penetration tester, researcher, trainer, entrepreneur, security guru. She received a grant from DARPA for smartphone security research. She's spoken at various conferences. She graduated college at age 18, and she authored the book Penetration Testing, A Hands-On Introduction to Hacking. Hi, Georgia.
Hi, I heard you had to look at the title. I totally heard the book shifting. Like, what's the name of the book? What's the name of the book?
It's all about respect. I didn't want to misquote it.
That's all right. Like, it's a little known fact that me and the publisher basically fought about the title for months. Like, I said the word hacking or hacker had to be in it, and they said the word penetration testing had to be in it, so we put both in. So it's both penetration testing and hacking.
Aha. Yeah, I knew the actual title. It was the subtitle, A Hands-On Introduction to Hacking, that I did not want to mess up. Full disclosure there.
No worries, I'm just joking with you.
It's all good. So, give us a brief overview of yourself, your business interests, your expertise.
Well, I guess I'm what you'd call the technical person through and through. When I first started work, it was you start off as a technical person and then you become a manager. And I'm not great with people, so I wasn't excited about that. I never really wanted to become a manager. I wanted to skip all those steps and become the person with the crown at the top who's on the news and the technical person, but not all those steps in the middle. So I guess that's how I ended up doing what I was doing. Like, about the time that it was time for me to become a manager, I quit working and started doing my own thing, but basically because I was forced to, because I got a research grant and then got fired. So, that happens. So, I do penetration testing, I do research, I do some development. I would not call myself a developer per se, but I get the code working well enough, and when we don't have for real developers. I have two companies now. I still have Bulb Security, my consulting LLC that I've had since I got my DARPA grant in 2012, and I also have Shavira, which I started about a year ago, and I went through the Mach 37 accelerator with it. So we're doing security products. So security consulting is nice and all. It's good business. I'll certainly never get out of it. But security products, you can make money while you're asleep, whereas with training or pen testing or something like that, you need people doing services. So someone has to actually be working. With a good product that sells well and meets people's needs, you can have developers working on new features on the product and things, but by and large it can sell itself at a certain extent. So we're trying that out. I built hacking tools for a while, so this is kind of the next iteration of that, make it a little more business centric as opposed to researcher centric, slap some fancy APIs and front ends on it and make the reporting nicer, and you've got an enterprise security tool. So that's my current, trying to do that thing.
That almost sounds like you've plagiarized something from Advanced Persistent Security.
Really? I have to admit I haven't watched it before, so...
It's all good. We're actually working on a security product. It will actually kind of fit into the unified threat management arena. We refuse to use terminology like threat intelligence, but it is kind of a small business solution for unified threat management. Not really going to go much further on that one because we've got a lot of development to go, and I don't want to say that it can do something that it may not be able to do by the time we get to production with it.
But that's the whole point. You have to say that your tool does everything, and then deliver any of it. That's how you make a security tool, right?
Well, I mean, we might slap the title of next gen on it, so it can be a next generation unified threat management system, or we might even say the generation after next.
What is the generation after next, I wonder?
I don't know. That's what we're going to call our stuff, though.
Well, I mean, I've always been, I don't know if flabbergasted is the right word, but like, when that happened with Norse, and it's like, but they were at all the conferences and they were giving out funny hats. They had to have been legit, right? I mean, that's what makes a legit company, having good swag and good booths, right? I mean, the idea that you could be made up, basically, and doing that well, and like have people, venture capital, like being poured into you, that it's since I'm in the stage of an early stage company, trying to get traction and trying to get money and all that stuff. It's just like the idea that people can basically just make it up and succeed at it's interesting. Maybe not necessarily a good way, but
exactly. And because we're trying to cater to small to mid-sized business, that's why we're trying to stay as honest as possible and not try to overhype anything. We would prefer the product to actually speak for itself. While you're talking about swag, you're definitely right in the swag arena. I scored this at Great Wide Open. It's a Tux the Penguin with Microsoft's Open Cloud logo on it. And then, more swag from the conference as well. That's another thing we've not really developed for the company yet. I honestly don't think we're ever going to come up with swag. We'll probably just stick with business cards and maybe t-shirts and call it good.
Well, we had to do, we did an ISSA conference, so it was like the day after DerbyCon, which was funny because I said I'd never go back to DerbyCon, but then I went to a conference the next day in the same city, so it was basically like going to DerbyCon. And anyway, so they gave, as part of like my honorarium for it, they gave me a free booth, and I was like, oh crap, now I'm gonna have to like stock a booth. So my mom actually got pretty into it, like making the banners and stuff. But we had like the little, like, those plastic bracelets that said Bulb Security and Shavira, and we had stickers, and we had one other thing that was really cool, and I can't remember what it was, but I remember that like the Trusted Sec booth had like the exact same stuff, which was funny. But yeah, we had, I guess, pretty good stuff for a small conference. But yeah, like Norse always had the best stuff with those hats, and then when they had those booth babes that were like, they had the girls and the boys, so it's like they did the booth babe thing right, that they kind of made fun of it, that it was like, oh, everybody just has scantily clad girls, so we'll get like bodybuilder dudes in like scantily clad gladiator outfits. I mean, I thought that was awesome. So yeah, they did it right.
I think it sounds as if they did. Truth be told, I've never even really been to a conference. I've been to a few meetings at Hack RVA in Richmond, Virginia. I've been to a couple of ISC Squared chapter meetings, and I've been to one ISSA meeting, but I'm actually working on getting some speakers for the Atlanta ISSA conference this year. I'm planning on hitting a lot of conferences this year. Besides that, I've been to SANS training, not even the conferences.
I've never been to a SANS training. It's like, I guess I wanted to, but they were so expensive, and it was like I never had anybody to pay for it. Like I never had a employer who was gonna send me to like either Black Hat training or SANS training. I was like, forget it.
Exactly. I had one that was going to pay for me to go to Hacker Halted, but then the contract got cut and I moved, so I didn't get to go to Hacker Halted. But it's going to be in Atlanta this year, so I'm probably going. I got to go to SANS training this year to renew the SANS training from 4 years ago, because when I worked for the DoD, I had to be certified as an auditor, and management sent me to SANS training for GSNA as opposed to CISA. So that's how I got in.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I do training, and I've always kind of just like done conference training, and for a while I did training online, like to set up a go-to meeting. So it's always just kind of been like fly-by-night kind of training, and I now that I have business people around me who are like actually talking about, well, let's get like certified by the government and stuff, and then students will have to come. And I'm like, I knew there was a reason I hired you business people. So smart. So yeah, training is an interesting thing, and that's actually like my CEO, he's been around for forever, and like he remembers like when SANS like first came into being, and it's like there's no way you'll get that many people who want to take security classes. Like that's how long ago it was that like security was kind of this thing, and now it's like everybody needs security. I imagine
Right.
the founders at least have made good money on that organization.
They're probably living pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's discuss some current events. And by current events in plural, I'm realistically meaning current event in singular, because the main topic that we're covering today is a current event as well. So the big current event I have would be Apple discontinuing the use of QuickTime on Windows machines, very similar to how they handled Safari. It's like overnight they just made a decision. We are no longer supporting QuickTime on Windows. It's a gaping wide security hole. It's very high CVSS. It's a critical finding. We're still going to offer to install QuickTime from Apple Software Updater.
I mean, it happens. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's good that we're seeing it in the news that like people are realizing, I guess, that it's an issue that software that's not being updated is still being pushed out like that. But I mean, it's hardly a singular incident. I mean, I see more Windows XP systems in a big business these days than I probably should. It'll be stuff like it's embedded in a manufacturing device, so it would cost them $2 million to replace it, or something like that, like legitimate business reasons why they still have it, as opposed to we just forgot about it kind of stuff. That, I mean, you're going to
Right.
have things like this. I think, I mean, at the very least, it's a client-side software, so as long as you're careful about what kind of files you play with it. I mean, it's not like just by being there, it's gonna be like remotely accessible, like you often do see with things like Windows XP, where you actually have remote vulnerabilities that the machine's just being on, you can attack them. So, but I mean, like I said, I think it's good that it's in the news, that if I can Google QuickTime vulnerability and it's got, 400,000 results coming up. I mean, that's not something we would have seen as early as, or as late even as just a few years ago. That wouldn't be mainstream news at all. So I think the fact that, the world at large is thinking about these security things. I mean, I, as a security person, I'm not that old. I haven't been doing this that long. And, just in the time since I started security to now, that just people who aren't in any technical field at all, just being the kinds of conversations I'm able to have with, just about anybody, young or old, technical, non-technical. I mean, there are varying degrees of technical, but I think a lot of people are thinking about stuff like this. Like, people know what a security update is. People know what cryptography is. People know like why you don't want to use the same password everywhere. And I mean, that's a major step forward, because everybody always harks on the users, but the users shouldn't have to be really technically sophisticated to do this. So we are, I think, seeing a lot of leaps and bounds forwards with this sort of stuff.
And I think we'll definitely cover this part a little bit later, but people actually seem to care more about their privacy now. They've lost a lot of the faith that they have in the parties they deal with, in terms of trusting them to secure their data, secure their information, and now people are definitely taking a more active stance with that regard. The two biggest things that I've noticed from the conversation that I want to point out with XP, with the podcast that's coming after this that we recorded before this one with Matthew Eliason, we talk about Windows XP being in the top 3 operating systems still. That's alarming. That's very alarming. He and I know each other from the military. The Navy is still using Windows XP on surface ships. That's
Probably the
it
same
just
sort of situation. It's embedded like in that big, I assume, like space station-y looking thing like they have in the front of the plane, you know. It's expensive to replace it. It's not like buy a new laptop. Windows XP was a
exactly.
good operating system. I don't necessarily know that Microsoft has done that well again. Like 7 was pretty good, 10 is pretty good, 8 and Vista were disasters. I mean, these are universal truths, but I mean, Windows XP
Right.
was a good operating system. My father refuses to give it up. Like, weird in terms of security, this man. Like, you know, he's a physicist, so he's smart, but he's not into security. But he thinks he's into security because he, you know, has read some articles online, probably the same articles like these about QuickTime. So he's like, I won't put the printer on the network because there might be hackers. Oh no. But
The
he
hackers
still
will.
uses Windows XP, so I try and explain to him like, you know, the likelihood of your like home printer getting hacked and it actually causing you major problems are much smaller than, you know, you're opening a malicious file that you downloaded from the internet on your Windows XP system, but you know, it doesn't sink in.
Right. I think two of the biggest concerns that go along with this, not necessarily with QuickTime, but with the whole explosion of mainstream media attention for cybersecurity would be the obviously within the phishing and social engineering realm, it's becoming a bigger and bigger concern because you've got people phishing vice presidents of accounting and CFOs purporting to be the CEO, getting W-2 data, and then, of course, just doing it to deliver payloads for malware to set up that interpreter session or what have you. The other one, the biggest question I have is, while I applaud Apple for how they did it, why could this have not been Adobe and why could this have not been Flash?
Well, it could be, I guess. Or you mean you just like hate those and want to see them go away?
A good indication of insecurity in the computer world away from smartphones, keeping in mind that your topic is mobile insecurity, is the use of Flash. Flash is inherently insecure, and with it, there's very little mitigation, and honestly, it just needs to go away. No one really supports it anymore. But for whatever reason, it just keeps chugging right along, but useful things like Safari and QuickTime go away, and Flash just sticks around.
Well, I mean, I like to think of things like that. Well, like WebKit in particular on mobile, I kind of, you know, cheekily call it like a bunch of used after free bugs that somehow renders pages. Um, Flash and things like that, JavaScript. I mean, a lot of those are, you know, kind of in the same boat. That particularly like dynamic rendering, if you will. It really is just a bunch of use after free bugs.